your body starts not getting the messages. Had a little trouble with my speech, a little trouble with swallowing. Low blood pressure was another one. Nighttime dysfunction where I would act out my nightmares. Just a number of things that don't typically appear in the early stages of Parkinson's hit me within a year. And I had severe nausea for over a year. So pretty much during the day, just to keep the pills down because I'm working full time, graham crackers, bananas, and saltines was my diet. And that's when I had a great walk, and I joke about it now, but I had my lentil meatballs cooking in the oven and went and sat on a bench to enjoy the sunshine on a February day, and I had a stroke. By the end of summer 2022, I was off of all my Parkinson's medication, symptom-free.
Okay, good morning and welcome. I'm very excited. We have a special guest. Mimi is with us today. Mimi, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe you're in South Carolina. I think I saw you posted that on X or Twitter the other day. Is that correct?
Yes, good morning. I am. I'm in Charleston, South Carolina.
How is it over there? You guys have pretty nice weather right now?
Oh, we have great weather. We really do. Beautiful weather. It's a little chilly, but nothing compared to what the rest of the country is having right now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's about 10 degrees outside where I'm at here in Washington State. So you have, I've seen some of your stuff on X primarily, and you've had quite a remarkable story that came from a place of a lot of health issues, and now you're doing much better. Maybe just share with us a little bit about your background, who you are a little bit, and then we can talk about your health journey, if you don't mind.
Okay, sure. I'm 69 years old. I was a traditional stay-at-home mother, raised 3 daughters. Grew up in the Northeast. In my mid-40s, I discovered I was creative and could paint and absolutely loved it. And my youngest was going off to college, and I ended up having a career in dinnerware design. And it was just a fun timing. And I grew up thin pretty much my entire life, had a little trouble getting weight off with pregnancy, but I grew up thin. I also grew up eating well. So my father would hunt deer. We had a root cellar where we go down and get a slab of bacon that he had butchered. And my mother was a homemaker. We had tongue at the table, hawks cooking. So I grew up with good food, really nothing processed in the house. That doesn't mean my mother didn't bake cookies, but thankfully I grew up with real good food and knowing what good food was.
So are you generally pretty healthy as a kid then? Eating that stuff?
No, I had developed asthma at age 2 and was bedridden for really a good part of my childhood. I went to school, but I was exempt from gym until 7th grade when I miraculously discovered horses. Ended up being an accomplished nationally ranked equestrian. Coincidentally, because back then for asthma, that was bed rest. That was the remedy and the medicine wasn't very good. But then I became an active young teen and asthma wasn't an issue. And then high school participated in sports.
Interesting. And had the asthma after the childhood asthma, did it ever recur for you, or has it always been just a childhood time?
Yes, until 2 years ago, I've been on asthma medication my whole life. I don't get it from a cold, and I don't get it from exercise-induced asthma. I get a bronchial infection, and then the asthma hits me.
Okay, so post-viral asthma or something along those lines. So interesting. And other health issues you had developed over the years, and you said you were thin your whole life, so obviously maybe not obesity or anything like that, but what other issues were you dealing?
None other. I had trouble with fertility. I have 2 adopted daughters. They said I had a number of surgeries. They said I'd never have children. And after adopting the second daughter, I got pregnant 6 months later, so I had 3. I had a partial splenectomy. No, really just the asthma and the bronchitis sometimes would get me. I will say that even though I grew up that way, eating a lot of meat and a good healthy diet, I think as I got older, I started and when all this came out about fat, I really eliminated fat from a lot of my diet. I was vegan for 6+ years and plant-based for most of it.
So you said you vegan for 6 years and plant-based for much of your adulthood?
Yeah, in my adulthood, not growing up, but in my adulthood.
So that's, if you're 69 now, that would be a lot of years. That would make several decades.
Yeah, pretty much. And even became, when I got sick about 10, 12 years ago, I was recommended, and I even became stricter in that.
You said you became sick 10 or 12 years ago. What was that about?
In my 50s with my career and a lot of responsibilities, and before that, I was pretty active and adventuresome. Working 14, 16 hours a day. I stopped weight training, stopped biking 120 miles a week, stopped doing this because I was just from morning till night working. And at the same time going through menopause, which hit me pretty hard, my health started to suffer for it. And in my late 50s, I had a bad fall, broke my wrist, had to have 2 surgeries. After the second surgery, developed Dupuytren's nodules on my right hand, started contracture in my thumb, and got radiation therapy for that, which was an experimental treatment over in Germany. Mm-hmm. And did that, and it destroyed all the nodules in my hands, been fine. But I really consider that the catalyst for the downward spiral of my health.
So you said you had a pretty bad fall that broke your wrist. What was it? Crashing a bike, or was it a fall just slipping down?
Actually, it was I took one step. It was the most uneventful fall, but my wrist was out, went down on concrete, split my, I can't remember my which bone, but I split my bone down the middle and had to have a plate and screws. I just hit it in the wrong way and hard coming down on the concrete. And then had to have soft tissue repair the next year.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, probably a radial fracture, just a radial fracture. I used to treat those all the time.
Yeah, sure.
One of the reported problems with sort of plant-focused diet, whether vegan, vegetarian, is higher rates of osteoporotic disease or osteopenic disease. And so I'm just wondering, because you were probably in your, 50s when that occurred? Yes. Still young for a fracture of that. The surface is hard, but it's not that much energy. It's not like you're falling off a building or getting in a car wreck or something like that. So
they did send me for a bone scan. That was my first one, because I ultimately then fell and broke the other wrist. And so they did send me, and it was osteopenia at that time.
Okay. At what age was that? That was 50 something?
I would say that was my mid to late 50s.
Yeah. Okay. And at that point, the sort of thought was, I'm going to go even harder plant-based or something like that?
Well, actually, the doctor who did the radiation therapy noticed that I was in a lot of pain. I started to develop other symptoms, and she sent me to a rheumatologist, and that's where I was diagnosed with RA.
Oh, okay. So rheumatoid arthritis as well.
Yeah,
okay.
I was diagnosed and did the typical prednisone for a year and a half, 2 years, the hydroxychloroquine, the methotrexate, and then they started the biologics. I eliminated nightshades. I tried paleo. That didn't work. And then just doing research and a lot of doctors really touting the plant-based, I started just go heavier in that direction.
Plant-based, okay.
And of course, that didn't help me any.
And as far as the biologic Enbrel or Humira or something like that?
Yeah, Humira, which I am seriously allergic to, as it turns out.
Okay. And it may have been ultimately a good thing, because if had it worked a little bit, you may have just stayed on that. And
they put me on Orencia after that.
Okay.
Yeah. You don't think they were stopping at $4,000 or $4,500 for 4 injections a month.
Yeah, these are very expensive, aren't they?
Very expensive.
Very expensive medications. Very profitable, by the way. And Humira is one of the most profitable drugs of all time, which is interesting. And so you've got this autoimmune disease. You've got osteopenia. You had Dupuytren's, which is a weird thing most people haven't heard of, but you get these sort of contractures where the hand will eventually contract down, particularly, it depends. A lot of times it tends to be on this side of the hand, but it can happen. You said it was on your thumb, I think.
Contracture started on the thumb. I think there's 28 nodules. In 3 months, I had every single nodule.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
And the radiation helped, but made it go away. It's interesting.
They said, wait until your hand contracts and we'll cut it out, and then it'll come back again. And I said, that's not working. I'm an artist. It's my right hand.
Yeah.
Experimental treatment over in Germany that I had to go to another state actually to find somebody who would do it. Nobody would even talk to me about it here. But I'm like 10 or 12 years clear. I have a little dryness in that hand, so a little extra lotion, but it really is. They've had good success with it.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, Dupuytren's one of those weird things. It's reserved from hand surgeons. I ran into it as a general orthopedist, and we generally don't operate on that because it's a very intricate surgery to do that for many cases. So the rheumatoid arthritis, let me ask you, because you had that fall, you broke both your wrists, sounds like. You fell twice, broke both your
Yes.
wrists. You had osteopenia. You're on this plant-based diet for years. What was your protein sources back then? Were you mindful of how much protein you were getting?
Very little, unless it was plant or beans, maybe a little bit of chicken, a fistful, or half a chicken breast, a hamburger every once in a while, fish a little bit, not very much. And there was definitely no fat in my diet.
When you were vegan, obviously you weren't eating chicken and fish and hamburger. I mean, you were trying to get it from beans and lentils.
And
and tofu.
I've avoided dairy almost my whole entire life. It just doesn't work with me. So I was pretty restricted.
Gotcha. Okay. I guess at the bottom of your health, whatever it was at your worst, I don't know when it was, 60 or whatever age you were, 62. Yeah. What was it like? What was it overall?
2 years after RA, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease.
Oh,
and immediately put on carbidopa, levodopa.
Yeah.
And that's where they really start pushing you. You have a choice. The medicine competes with protein in getting to your brain. So you can take the medicine, but you're going to have to eliminate the protein. And for me, the time of the day where I didn't need to be on, which is a term they use for Parkinson's, when you're most like how you should be, and I didn't need to rely on the medication, was at night. So I maybe had a tiny fistful of protein in the evening.
Wow. That's a tough situation because you're dealing with osteopenia, you got rheumatoid arthritis, medications. You got So when you developed Parkinson, was it just did you have a tremor? Did you have some rigidity?
No, I had every symptom but tremor. I had balance issues, obviously, which were showing up in the other. I had trouble swinging my arm. I started to develop some autonomic symptoms. Mm-hmm. And probably a year into my Parkinson's diagnosis, I became a multiple system atrophy suspect, which is a Parkinson's plus. It usually looks like Parkinson's for the first 5 years. And then after that, in 3 to 5 years, you're gone. It is a rapid decline, unlike Parkinson's, which goes really slow.
So when you say multi-system atrophy, things are shrinking down your internal organs and things of that nature. What was the atrophy?
Yeah. So I developed neurogenic bladder, which means my brain and bladder weren't getting the signal. So, I would take a sip of water and think my bladder was full. It wasn't, your body starts not getting the messages. Had a little trouble with my speech, had to do therapy for that, a little trouble with swallowing. Low blood pressure was another one that was coming. And probably the early on speech, the early on bladder, the early on nighttime dysfunction. I developed parasinomia where I would act out my nightmares. I had leg dystonia, occasionally arm, but I would get leg dystonia. Just a number of things that don't typically appear in the early stages of Parkinson's hit me within a year. So then they start to think, okay, you have a more advanced form.
Okay. And at this time, the medical sort of system was telling you, were they still discussing plant-based diets, or were they saying, here's some medications to take, or what was
Oh, no, I had gotten up to 1,200 milligrams of carbidopa levodopa to function. I would start at 5:30 in the morning. It takes about 45 minutes to kick in. And I would take it 5:30 in the morning before I even took a step out of bed, and then took my last long extending pill at 10 o'clock to hopefully let me sleep through the evening. So I was on a way more medication than anybody in the early stages is typically on.
Goodness. And still taking medicine for rheumatoid arthritis at the time as well?
Yeah. Asthma. Now I'm taking medication for heartburn twice a day. Obviously, I'm taking all these medications. Mm-hmm. And then one of the side effects of the carbidopa levodopa is nausea. And I had severe nausea for over a year. So pretty much during the day, just to keep the pills down, because I'm working full time, graham crackers, bananas, and saltines was my diet. And then a little protein salad at night.
Yeah. Most people, obviously, that's not a particularly healthy diet. But if that's all you can tolerate. So let me ask you, you're still working at this time. How was your mental state? Were you depressed at all about all this, or what were you functioning well cognitively?
No, I was having trouble functioning cognitively, and I eventually retired. I was slower. Went through the cognitive testing. I didn't classify as cognitively impaired, but I clearly wasn't myself. I can hold an enormous amount of information in my head, and it's I'm having trouble putting together a Thanksgiving dinner. So I definitely noticed executive function tasks, which is what we do every day, was trouble. And it was tough for me to keep that pace. And I didn't take it poorly, but I didn't take it well. I was walking, which they do recommend high intensity exercise, which is probably the only thing that helps. So I was getting some of that, but it was increasingly getting more difficult for me to do. My spirits actually turned, or I retired, and a couple months later, my spirits turned around a little bit. And that's when I had a great walk, and I joke about it now, but I had my lentil meatballs cooking in the oven and went and sat on a bench to enjoy the sunshine on a February day, and I had a stroke.
Oh my gosh! It just gets more and more. So you had lentil meatballs. So there's no meat in those lentil meatballs.
There's no meat in them. There is now, but there was none then.
Okay, goodness. So you had a stroke. Okay, so now you got a stroke. How did the stroke affect you?
The stroke I came through pretty well. I got TPA within probably a half of an hour. It was a medium-sized stroke. Lost my speech, and then the left side of me. I got through pretty well and was released after 3 days. And within 24 hours, I passed out. Luckily, my daughter caught me. And apparently through the IV, while I was in for treating of the stroke, I was infected with staph A. So I'm back in the hospital.
It just gets better. So
it really does.
So did you have septicemia?
I was getting there. It took about five days for the cultures not. It took them one, because I kept screaming about my back and nobody would listen. They said, really, the attitude was, lady, you just were in bed not moving for a stroke for 3 days. Of course, your back's hurting. And I kept saying, no, something's really wrong. And about 5 days in, because antibiotics aren't working, they added gentamicin, I believe is what they added.
Yeah.
And then sent me home with a PICC line, still ignoring my back, sent me home with a PICC line with the original antibiotic taking me off the gentamicin.
Okay. Yeah, gentamicin is a pretty rough antibiotic. It has a lot of nasty side effects.
I think naproxen was the traditional one they do. And
naproxen's an anti-inflammatory. So probably.
Oh, okay. So it was whatever they give you that starts with an N. I did know all this by heart, but I've forgotten it. And then 2.5 weeks later, I had actually walked a mile. I went home with a PICC line and walked a mile with a walker that day, really determined, okay, I'm not doing well, but I'm here. So I need to buckle down and really tackle all of this and change my attitude. And I walked a mile with a walker. I went upstairs. I lived in a townhouse that had 27 steps. And I got up the first 13 and was in the kitchen and went to go get up the other 14. I went to go take a step and I couldn't move. Called my family, and that's where they took me back to the hospital.
What's going on this time?
Oh, gosh. This is where everything gets really bad.
Okay? It's not already bad enough. Goodness.
And this is your department, too, so you'll find this interesting.
Sure.
Yeah, my blood work was absolutely wonderful. And they said, you've got a PICC line with antibiotics, go home. And my son-in-law said, no, we are not leaving until you do an MRI. My mother-in-law is a tough lady, and she's screaming about her back. You need to check. And finally, about 3 a.m, they threatened to call security on him. He said, I'm sorry, you go call who you want. We're getting the MRI. They came back about 3 a.m. with their tail between the legs and said, I'm sorry, but you have osteomyelitis, discitis, including the infection is now in your spinal canal. You're not going anywhere.
Yeah, that's where I suspected this was going when you mentioned the back pain. So you've got this horrible bone and disc infection, which is just a horrible diagnosis. My goodness.
Oh, it's horrendous.
And this was staph. Was it? I don't know if they call it.
Well, originally they thought it was staph. By the time everything finished, because the story gets a little worse before it gets better, then they're saying, we really think this is MRSA, because I was in the hospital for over 6 weeks, still not getting well. Vancomycin gave me neutropenia. Now I have to stay for lockdown. Had what they suspected was another TIA right in front of the doctor, and they're rushing me down. I have no white blood cells, so now they're putting me on Deptomycin. So I was on vancomycin, the gentamicin, another antibiotic in the hospital for 6 weeks. They're ready to release me. Notice that I have no white blood cells. take me off all those drugs and put me on Deptomycin. And finally, it was that one that started to, because I'm still complaining about back pain the whole time this is going on. And now they're saying, you've been in bed for 2 months. Of course, your back hurts. And I knew something else was wrong.
Okay. And so how are your kidneys, by the way, being on vancomycin and all this, your hearing's okay,
good.
all that stuff?
Yeah.
Interesting. There's interesting side effects of these drugs, but goodness.
Yeah, tough.
You've got more back pain despite PICC line, IV antibiotics, the discitis, the osteomyelitis. What's going on at this point with the continued back pain?
So at this point, they said I go to rehab. Still, they piled on a few more medications. Now I go to rehab. I get released. So this all started February 7th for the stroke, and I get released the end of April finally out of rehab.
You're on a walker.
I'm in a walker, in pretty rough shape.
Okay. And you still have, obviously, rheumatoid arthritis. You still have Parkinson's disease.
Yes.
You have a stroke. You have osteomyelitis in your spine. Goodness.
And in my spinal canal, which it took 6 months for Deptomycin to kill the cyst of it in there. So they sent me home saying, you got a 50-50 chance. Well, actually, and I will back up one. They had to convince the doctor, but I really was so sick that no orthopedic surgeon wanted to touch me loaded with this in my body. Because also it was in my psoas muscle as well. It had seeded and spread a lot, but I had surgery around 1:00 in the morning for surgical debridement to hose me down with the antibiotics.
Yeah.
Because they said, you're just not going to pull through. You have too many things wrong with you.
So you had, it sounds like an abscess on your psoas, which is muscle, one of our hip flexors in the back of our back of our pelvis, basically. And so, did they do an open procedure to get to that? Did they have to open you up and get in there?
Surgery, yes, they did.
Goodness,
they did. And I think, again, I forget. At this point, I'm pretty out of it. I'm really sick. I'm not doing well. I'm out of it. I'm not particularly aware. They had me on Dilaudid because the pain was just the most excruciating pain. But apparently they went in from another direction because I had the abscess in my spinal canal and they didn't want to disturb that.
Yeah. Gosh, goodness, this is horrible. I feel very sorry. And I've been there around patients that have been like that. And it is just a nightmare. Goodness. And sounds like you've got a supportive family, though. At least you got some.
I do. I have a loving family, a great son-in-law, I have great daughters. My youngest daughter's a pit bull who hauled in everybody at the hospital in a conference room because really they just were missing the mark, not doing blood work, not watching, and just really demanding another hospitalist through this whole thing and demanding better care. So I have a very loving, supportive family.
Yeah. Like I said, sometimes you got to fight hard and advocate for yourself.
Because, you do. And when you're sick, it's hard to do it for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. You're just hoping somebody can provide. I imagine you felt fairly powerless in the situation in some regard, maybe. I don't know. Some people
very powerless. Yeah. Very powerless.
Okay. So are we at the bottom yet or is there something else coming on?
We're on our way to my life improving, sort of.
I'm getting sad listening to all this stuff.
The story turns out well. No. Yeah. So I did physical therapy for 3 times a week for about a year and a half. Unfortunately, I didn't get anywhere. I got better. I could use a cane. Still in a lot of pain, not doing well. And it was at this point where, and I got maybe to a quarter of a mile, but not much further. And this is at this point where I had my epiphany in front of a mailbox that I passed every day. I went to go turn around. I went to go turn around in defeat and stopped and heard a question. So you can't walk to where you want. What can you do? And I stopped for a bit, scanned my body. And I said, I have 10 steps in me. And so I took those 10 steps and I turned around and went home. And every day I'd come to the 2 blocks plus 10 steps and would ask the same question. And within a year, I had walked 2 miles when for a year and a half, I couldn't barely get past a quarter.
And this is still on a walker. Is this still on a walker?
No, I'm with a cane. The walker is gone. Okay. So I got rid of that during physical therapy, but I still needed a cane. Still on all the same medication. About 3 months into my 10-step journey, I realized I've put on some weight. And I realized I can't walk well, it's hurting my back. I need to get the weight off. And so I went at this, and I still haven't connected in my head, because I went across the street to a diet clinic, not even realize I'm on 13 plus medications. What's one more? Because also when they released me from the spinal infection, they said you need to be on antibiotics for life. So I took Bactrim twice a day, the Bactrim DS, the 800 twice a day for 3.5 years after being released from the hospital.
Goodness.
So now we're adding that medication. And I went to this man and brought my bag of medicine, told him everything that was wrong. And he just looked at me and I told him what I ate. And he said, "Are you willing to trust me?" And at this point what could I lose? I said, yes. He said, "I want you to eat 50% fat, 25% protein, and cut your carbs to 25%.
Okay.
And that's where those 10 steps and working with him really started to turn my life around. I started to feel, let's just say I wasn't feeling worse. The first month I started to feel a little better, and not used to introducing fat and protein like that in my diet. I'd have a little app. Sometimes I wouldn't pay attention, and I'd notice when I'd log my food that I was getting up to 70, 80% fat. And this is probably 6 months in, and the rest protein and not wanting carbs anymore. Mm-hmm. Maybe once a week I'd have a sweet potato or dried plantains or something like that. But I started to notice I was getting better, and I started to notice that my neuro symptoms were improving really fast when I got up that high in the fat.
So you're talking about your Parkinson's related symptoms?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
And that's where it really connected in my brain, where I started to think, wait, something's really changing here. When I'm changing my food, I'm walking 10 steps more than I walked the day before. I'm not doing anything else. And I started then to notice my neuro symptoms better, started to, instead of having to take my Parkinson's medication every 3.5 hours, now I can go 4.5 hours. My RA is better. I'm really noticing I'm clearer. I'm thinking better. My energy's better. I'm not feeling as sick. I'm feeling hopeful.
What year is this? Do you remember the?
So my stroke was in 2019. So 21.
So 2021.
It was a little bit of a slow process. So 21.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me just, before you go on.
Sure.
Your whole life you had avoided fat. Was it because fat's bad, it's going to give us heart disease and we need to minimize it? Was that the rationale for doing that, or just
I think probably as I got into my teens, I would have been better if I stuck how I grew up eating. No, I think really for me, always caring how I looked and wanting to be slim, fat was going to make you fat.
Got it. Okay. So if I eat this fat, it's gonna land on my hips.
That's right. And what woman wants that?
Yeah, as I hear a moment on the lips, a lifetime on the hips, or something like that. So you're avoiding fat for basically vanity reasons for your whole life. But were you exposed to? I'm sure if you're 69, you were exposed to the butter's going to kill you and avoid saturated. That's been going on for a long time.
Yeah, that's been going on a while. I think I was worried more how I was going to look than whether it was going to kill me, to be honest. Yes, they said it wasn't good for you. My family have got good longevity. I wasn't really too worried about that.
When you started this, when you met with this person that's advised you to increase your protein, your fat, and limit your carbohydrates, what were you eating at that time? Was it a lot of meat, or how are you getting your fats?
You mean to start? Yes. I wouldn't cut the fat off of the meat. I'd start to include beef more, quite a lot in the week. It might have been hamburger at first, then steak, but I would eat the fat, avocado. When I started feeling better at 70% to get up to the 80, I started adding a little MCT oil, just to make those numbers. A little bit of salad. I make my own kimchi, so I'd have a little bit of that for my gut health, being on the antibiotics. Fish, some bacon. I just wasn't worried about eliminating the fat. I would make sure that I would eat it, and I would get it from meat. So I really started to introduce a lot more meat probably in that process than I ever have, except for my young childhood.
This person that advised you to do this, was this a healthcare provider that said trust you?
He was a chiropractor, not a physician. He was a chiropractor, had a lot of health issues himself, and this is how he healed himself. Okay.
He said initially go 50% fat, and you decide, was it on your own decision to go up to the 78?
No, it was really by accident. After a few months, as I'm fooling around, I'd eat the whole steak instead of half, and then I'd eat the fat. And then when I would log my numbers, I'd see them up more. It felt nutritious. It felt satisfying. I just did it. And he wasn't a big one on me logging numbers. I kept my calories low. I was dropping the extra weight that I had put on, eating fat, the weight's coming off, not increasing. So that made movement ever. And I just noticed like slight little things that made me feel better. And I just, at this point now, I'm starting to trust intuitively what I need and what I'm missing. I just decided to go with it.
When you, it's so interesting because at some point you said the only thing you could tolerate was like graham crackers and bananas or something like that. How did you suddenly be able to tolerate all this meat and fat? Was that
I tolerate it because the carbidopa made me nauseous. So now I'm not nauseous eating fat and protein. And once I did make a conscious choice, knowing that if I eat all this fat, and I told him too, if I eat this fat and protein, my medicine's is not gonna work. And I actually was diagnosed by 3 of the top Parkinson's centers in the U.S. They said they all tell you that, and I can't afford that. I don't want to be in that place. And he said, "What you're doing is not working, and we need to get you well. We're not going to worry about the weight." And so I just didn't worry whether my medication was working. And what happened is I needed less of my medication because my body was getting what it needed to have from nutrient-rich food.
So, yeah, interesting. So it sounds like you were maxing out the carbidopa, levodopa.
Yes.
And it wasn't really providing full benefit on whereas the nutrition actually outperformed it. Is that fair to say?
Correct. That's a great way of saying it. And that's exactly what happened.
Okay.
No, and it wasn't performing well. I even did a clinical trial for a new drug that was to help people with off symptoms because I was having a lot in between. There's a window between one dose and the next. And I was reverting back in a bigger window as time went on. And the food outperformed the medication. And it was, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to ask you because you're seeing this person who, as a chiropractic physician, and then you still have neurologists, you still have rheumatologists, you still have probably infectious disease folks, maybe a spine surgeon or something in there.
Yeah.
Were you still seeing those people when you started changing your diet, and was there any commentary on that? So how did that go with a different specialist? Did they say diet has nothing to do with it or good for you or not really care, or how did that go?
No, nobody said good for me. The orthopedic surgeon did say good for me with the 10 steps and thought that was really great. I had a really good movement disorder specialist who for my Parkinson's, and she said, interesting, took notes. Every other doctor who saw an improvement, most of them were not curious at all. And they did notice an improvement with me. I didn't tell them, to be honest with you, the extent of what I was doing. I just said, I'm doing a little bit of keto-ish thing. I really didn't play it up because I really didn't want to battle.
Yeah. And of course, they probably said, well, good, the medicines are finally working or something.
Yeah, of course. Give it enough time. Yeah.
Right, I'm sure. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, exactly.
Tell me about, so did you, I think you progressed your diet onto a fully carnivorous diet at some point, maybe.
I did last year. Yes, I really did. I stuck with the keto. And when I say keto, it was very clean keto. I didn't do a packaged keto. It was because that would have really defeated the purpose of what I was doing. And it was actually then, carnivore started in January.
So
to
January
just back
20,
up,
2023, January 2023?
Yes. I started to really go more because I started to feel good and want to make a change. So 2020, let me see, get backwards. So 2022 was when I noticed, I'm not so sure I have Parkinson's. And that's when I so I started to eliminate my medications and got off of them. And the second to last medication was my carbidopa levodopa. And because I started to question, this is all going away. I'm improving. And so maybe I don't have it. 25% of people who are diagnosed with it. And I clearly had some form of Parkinsonism, but Parkinson's, I wasn't so sure at this point because I'm getting better. So I started fooling around with my medication and we're encouraged actually in treatment to fool around and play with your windows and your time spans. And I would fool around with about 25 milligrams. And it was at that, by the end of summer 2022, I was off of all my Parkinson's medication.
And
symptom free.
symptom free is an
Symptom
important
free.
part on that. And that's, and so your neurologists, were they curious or at that point?
Well, they canceled that. You only get one appointment a year, and I canceled it and I haven't gone back. They did notice I was improving the previous time. They definitely said, your symptoms are getting better, when I said I was doing a little bit more keto.
What inspired you eventually to go fully carnivorous? Was it just the fact that you were clinically improving the closer you got, or was there something that drove you there?
I'm already at 70-80% fat. It's like, why not? Mm-hmm. Why not streamline? I just find a narrow diet suits me really well.
Yeah.
And so keeping my narrow diet, I did introduce eggs. I've never been an egg eater my entire life, even as a child. So I'm not 100% carnivore, though I am now, which is interesting. Starting January 2024, I'm doing the Lion's diet, and I'm absolutely loving it. I'm absolutely feeling fantastic. That restrict, that limited. But I do eat wild fish and good wild fish, maybe 2 eggs a couple times a week, kimchi and my meat, maybe every 3 months because I have to. I'll have a piece of chicken. Other than that, I don't really care to have it. And I just felt good. And then this January, I decided I'm just doing beef, salt, and my beef is from regenerative farms. I get the good stuff. Mm-hmm. I had a pretty sick body I had to heal, so it was important. Coffee and water, and that's my diet, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, my diet, except the coffee, I don't drink coffee. It's my diet right now. This month is also for me. Every year World Carnivore Month rolls around, and I always go to beef, salt, and water, and I do feel really, really good on that. And so because you were at a point where you were bedridden in the hospital, PICC line, stroke, Parkinson's, spinal infection. Where are you at today from function? What can you do today after you change?
I can do everything. I don't know if you've seen. So a year and a half ago, I was diagnosed with a borderline. My numbers tanked from being sick and everything. Borderline osteoporosis, and they want to put me on drugs. And I said, there's no way. I have worked hard to get off of 13 plus medications. I am not going on another one. So I started weightlifting, and I've worked with a trainer 3 times a week for a year, coming up 2 years this April. And I weight train hard. I can leg press 265 pounds, lateral leg press 65 pounds. Actually, there's a slight incline on that. Mm-hmm. I run up and down. I couldn't walk up those stairs and had to move from my townhouse, never going back after surgery because I couldn't make 27 steps. I run up and down 22 steps with a kettlebell with my trainer. She's 75. She works with a lot of older people, and she's been really good for me. I hike 8 plus miles at over 10,000 feet. There is nothing I can't do. The cane is gone. My balance is good. I'm a beast in the gym.
Good for you. I mean, you can tell just hearing your story, you have to be tough. I'm just listening how tough you got to be to I'm just going to push myself another 10 steps or whatever. And even if now you're, like you said, going miles and in the gym and getting stronger. And how has the family taken to your new diet? Are they like totally on board, or they think it's weird, or what are their thoughts?
They thought it was weird. At first they were happy. Hey, whatever gets you well. And then after I got well, they were like, okay, you're well. Why are you still doing it? Aren't you carrying this a little too far? Especially as I got more with when I'd visit them, what would you like for me to get at the grocery store? So get me 10 pounds of beef and some steaks, ground beef. And they were like, do you want to eat anything else? So they then a little bit came discouraging, sadly, a little discouraging about, well, why you're strong. You can do all these things. Why are you weightlifting 3 times a week and not missing? This last 6 months, I've noticed a shift. I think they've just accepted that's what I'm going to do, and I'm not about to change it. And so now they're okay with it. Yeah.
And you mentioned, I asked you a question about cognitive function. You said you had some issues with executive function.
Yes, I did.
How are you today mentally? You feel like I'm talking to you. Obviously, you're very intelligent and you're very insightful in a lot of the medical stuff that a lot of people have no idea about. But how do you feel personally about all this stuff?
I feel good. I feel restored. I really do. I definitely feel restored. Back to as sharp as I was.
Okay.
And I had enough that, even when I was in the disabled state, a part-time job just to keep me active would be out of the question because I really wasn't sure I could function at the level I like to. And I work part-time 5-6 days, sometimes more a month at the senior center in the fitness section, and learned a new computer program. And I only did that because I knew I was sharp enough. I knew I was just restored really to how I was. So I feel really good.
So you're back. You said you're back to doing some kind of work
at the senior center. I work at the best, checking people into fitness classes, private training, back in the fitness, which I love. My trainer's actually 6 feet from me back there. In between breaks, I get to chat with her. She's been just a wonderful supporter, taking it slow and pushing me at the same time.
How does she? Is she aware of your peculiar dietary?
She is. She's just do what you have. Just do what you have to. But yes, she is, and she's super supportive.
Do you still have any physicians involved in your care, a primary care physician or anybody like that?
No, I don't go back to them anymore.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, no, I just don't. I don't have anything wrong with me right now, so I don't go. I have a little trouble with occurring earache, so I am seeing a specialist next week. I think it's so I've had a little trouble this year. It set me back just a little bit, missed a little bit of training, but no. And I know you're a great doctor, but I avoid doctors and hospitals like the plague.
I do too. I try to stay away from it because I think many of them mean well, most mean, but I think the system is just. I think there's some real limitations with our system.
Yeah, I agree.
That is the adversity you overcame is truly incredible, quite honestly. And there's, like you said, at some point it was 50-50, and I would probably have bet even less than 50-50 if I was objectively looking as a physician, say, my God, all these things, I don't think she's going to be around another year or something like that.
I think they were thinking that. They just didn't quite tell me that.
Yeah, it's tough to we call it.
It's tough to give diagnosis.
Right,
yeah.
Right. Or just try to painting the picture of how severe it is. Because so let me ask you a question. You're off all antibiotics. Your back pain's gone.
My back pain's gone. I went off antibiotics against doctors' orders. Mm-hmm. They all said it's going to come back in 30 days and kill you if you go off.
Yeah.
And I went off against their orders a year ago.
Okay.
No back pain, but I work really hard. I work hard on my core. I do a lot of core training. We've really focused a lot on that. Now if I got to get up every hour and walk, I have extra curve in my spine from the infection and my vertebrae collapsing some. Mm-hmm. So I have extra curve and I have to do every hour. So I'll be a little stiff when I stand up from after the interview, but no back pain. No limitations.
Good for you. That's
I can do. I'm working on a higher than 4-minute plank. I can do a 4-minute plank, 100 sit-ups. I do 100 squats a couple times a week. We work hard on it all.
That's impressive. That's really good. That's very inspiring. And I think one of the I'm obviously known for nutrition, but equally as such, I believe that physical activity, particularly getting stronger, is critically important to health, particularly as we age. And I think it's so important to see it. Now, working at the senior center, checking people in, I'm sure you have discussions with people. Do you ever get a chance to talk to people about your journey or nutrition or any of that stuff? Has that ever come up? Because I know you're talking about it on social media, but
if they ask, I've learned that if I have to offer, they've seen me from a year ago when I walked in the gym. I was skinny and frail, and I think I started with a 2-pound weight. I was really skinny, frail. My muscles, I had no muscles. April 2020, I guess 22. I'll be coming up on 2 years, so 22. I just was skinny, a frail woman. So they've seen me, and they see me with my trainer in the gym working hard. So they'll ask. I don't offer because that's usually a sign they're not ready to hear. Mm-hmm. Some of them are amazed. I'd say 75% at least I hear no carbs. There's no way I could do that. And I don't want to have heart disease. Eating steak and butter. But then they look at me and say, you're absolutely amazing. But they still have the disconnect. Some listen. I've got a lot who see me with a trainer and say, how do you get in shape? And we'll see that lady right there. She's the one that works with me. And so they'll sign up with her. And funny, some of them will say to her, okay, so can I look like that? Because I have some pretty good biceps and great shoulder muscles. Can I look like that? What, about 3-6 months? My trainer just looks at him and says, she's been in here 3 times a week for almost 2 years working to get like that. So unless you're prepared to put in the time, no, you can't look like that in 3 months.
Yeah, it's not an overnight thing. It's definitely
No, it isn't.
Someone who's been training for 45
No,
years.
I mean, I'm not at my age, 69 years old.
You can do more than you think you can. It's quite interesting. People in their 70s and 80s that can put on muscle. So it's
well,
really
I'm hoping to put on some more.
Yeah, good for you. And you've obviously got a supportive environment. You created a supportive environment around you with the right people, the right trainers and things like that. We've got a little bit of time left. You're on social media, on X primarily. I don't know if you have another social media account. That's where I've seen you. How has that been received, and why are you doing that? Is there a particular reason you want to talk about this?
As of June 23, I had 135 followers and rarely shared. And I started to just share a little bit, posted a picture, and my account absolutely blew up. And then I started to share more of my journey, and I'm a pretty private person, and to keep it that way. But I just honestly just started to have people reaching out to me, and I just felt absolutely led to share my story. So many people my age have absolutely given up on life, expecting nothing great's going to happen. They couldn't restore their health. They couldn't get strong. They couldn't get fit. And I just started sharing more and more, and my account just has absolutely exploded.
What is the name of your account? Just out of
Sure. It's Mimi, Mimi, initial K, and then Morgan.
Mimi K. Morgan. Yeah, because I can't remember if I'm following you or not. I may or may not.
No, you're not. Of course,
let me rectify that. So
I love a follow. Thank you.
I just followed you back. Yeah, because you got some great stuff. It's very inspiring. I always like to, when I meet people and I know them, it's funner to follow them because I have a little more personal connect with their journey. And since you've been there, obviously you've gotten feedback. Obviously people are cheering for you. But I can't imagine you have not inspired a number of people because they see what you've gone through. And this is what I've learned. All the studies in the world, they're interesting. They're fine. Most people don't understand them. Most people don't read them. But when they see a relatable human being like yourself and others, that's what actually causes people to make a change. Have you met people that have started to change what they do due to your influence?
Hundreds every single day, Shawn. I can't tell you the message. I can't tell you the response. Particularly some with Parkinson, some with MS, a lot with stroke, a lot with RA, a lot of what I've dealt through. And how do I start? And I say, whatever if your 10 steps is 5, if it's 20, whatever, just start it and do it every single day and don't look back.
Yeah, I love that part of the attitude that it's just do a little bit more each time. And you just, after a period of time, that adds up significantly. So
it does. And 10 steps is not even across a room. Mm-hmm. And how 10 steps really transformed me. And then I started to nourish my body. And then from there, I was able to be well enough and get off of the medication that I could then start to build strength in the gym.
Yeah, obviously this is a story with a really nice sort of happy ending. Let me ask, because I try to, when I remember to, and I try to remember to ask this, have there been downsides of going on to this sort of dietary thing, particularly a carnivore diet? Have you noticed a lot of downsides associated with it, or has it all pretty much been upside for you?
It has 100% been on an upside. There is not one, including the cost of groceries, including I have no waste, the ease of making food. I can go out to a restaurant, everybody has a steak or a hamburger. For some reason they don't. I can get a good piece of fish. It's easy traveling. There is absolutely no downside to what I'm doing. It's been the opposite.
There are people out there, and I'm sure you've noticed it. It's pretty ubiquitous all over the media, calling for us to stop eating meat, cut back on meat dramatically, perhaps tax it, make it more expensive, ban. In New York, they actually banned meat from senior centers. This is, to me, in New York City anyway. Do you have a concern about that? What would your message be to those people that are saying, hey, this is what we need to do in the future for whatever reason we want to attribute it to?
Yeah, I'm extremely concerned. And that's also one of the reasons why I do mail order and local regenerative farmers. We have to support our small farmers. And I do believe they are going to, they're already starting. I do believe they're going to control our meat. And if you really look at farming, you see there's way more destruction from the crops and the chemicals and everything else that's done. And so I'm particularly supportive of regenerative farmers, and I'm quite concerned what's happening.
Yeah, myself as well. And I'm going to be actually talking with some members of the beef industry later today, to talk about some of this. So interesting. Mimi, we are unfortunately running out of time. This is just, I'm so glad I got to talk with you, but the real person behind the account, because it's an inspiring account. So Mimi K Morgan on Twitter, or now known as X. Go follow it, check it out. Do you have any goals? Any short-term, long-term goals that you'd like to achieve while you're doing all this work?
Actually, I do. I had given up a dream to walk the St. Francis of Assisi Trail, 800 kilometers. My daughter, during my sickest time, was in Spain and brought me back a shell, and I just ignored it. They wear a shell for the pilgrimage, and I'm going to be 70 in September, and my goal and dreams is to strengthen and train a little bit more and do the 800 kilometers this fall.
Wow, 800 kilometers, that's 500 miles. That's a long ways. That's a big, long walk.
Yeah, it takes a month.
And I guess you'll have to pack some steaks with you or something.
You bet. I think they eat beef. From what I hear in Spain, there's a lot of beef. So I think it should be good.
Yeah, pork is pretty big. Yeah, pork is very popular.
Okay. I might have to do a little pork, but yeah, I definitely will make homemade jerky and bring that with me.
Awesome. Mimi, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for sharing your story. Continued best of luck to you, and continue to inspire people. Awesome. Thanks so much.